بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Inshallah, we're continuing, and more than likely we will conclude, inshallah, Surah Al-Baqarah today. Just a reminder that how long this surah has, it took us so long to cover it, even though we were not going deep, except with some few verses, but mostly we were going really scratching the surface. Just to tell you how loaded with guidance the Quran is, and how much we're missing by not doing that exercise of embarking on a lifelong journey of reflecting and studying the Quran. It's long overdue to fix that, and it's long overdue that this becomes an integral part of our life as Muslims. Is to it's like we're taking a course called Quran, so we always have some homework and some work to do with that course. Depending on your schedule, you can do one verse a day, one verse a week, few verses every now and then, but it should be something that is continuous. That's the first thing. And with this, we really eliminate completely this idea that Quran is only for special people who are able to understand it, which is a very bad idea that caused a lot of damage. Or Quran is, or Muslims do not really need to study the Quran because they know their religion and they're doing what they're supposed to do. So what's the point? Yani? So the Quran is left only for anyone, somebody passes away, or just read it for rewards. Yani. Read and focus on the quantity so that you know how much you're going to get yani, in return. Yeah. But the idea of studying the Quran for guidance has gone largely disappeared. Yeah. And even when people do that, when they do Quran study circle, there is no reflection. I mean, they're just reading from all books. In some way, it's something that is really frozen. There is no reflection. There is no effort to contextualize the Quran in our today's life. Yani. So people will be reading the tafsir, whatever tafsir they pick, whatever interpretation, traditional interpretations was written centuries ago, and they read it, they feel good about themselves, but that's not how Quran should be handled. The other thing that we should keep in mind all the time, and that's really fundamental, yani, it's that this Quran and the prophetic model, the model of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I mean, model includes that authentic saying or hadith and seerah and his life and his personality, and these are meant basically are based on the fact that Islam is a mission, and these are meant to build the individual and the community to fulfill that mission. Without this in the background, it's not easy to understand this religion or to understand the Quran. Yeah. Without this always in the background, that this is a manual that is there to basically explain your mission to you and explain Allah, and then to motivate you and empower you and inspire you to fulfill that mission as an individual and as a community. That's why Quran is full of empowerment. Empowerment means that it's always trying to take care of the weaknesses of the individual and the weaknesses of the community, and try to cement those to build that well-rounded, mission-driven individual who knows their mission very well and who are committed to it, and and fulfill it to the best of their ability. And then the community is the same thing. In this context comes this last part of Surah Al-Baqarah, focusing on charity. And that charity is one of those mechanisms to build a strong community. Charity is not a marginal task that you do, basically spend whatever leftover money you have or occasionally, but it is a mechanism. It's like the mission, it's like the leadership, it's like the brotherhood, it's like the mentorship. It's one of those mechanisms to build that very solid community where nobody is left behind. Because by now we know that in a community when there is no solidarity and people are left behind, that becomes sources of weaknesses, crimes, hatred, you name it. And that weakens the community and weakens the society. So in this context, we understand the great focus on the charity, explaining from the beginning how to do it and what to spend, and giving a lot of incentives, a lot of guarantees, a lot of metaphors of people, and the do's and don'ts when it comes to charity, the way you do it. I mean, they're not many verses, but if you think about it, if you list the number of incentives in how many times the people were encouraged strongly to give, and then the metaphors and the analogies and the warnings, and the tawheed is always there, emphasizing that you're doing this for Allah. It's amazing. Those verses of starts from 261, and we reached, I think, we're gonna start talking about interest until 274. 261 to 274, that's about 13 verses. 13 verses loaded, loaded with explanation about everything about charity, what to spend, how to spend it, why we spending, and everything. And I like the part that will tell you that this Quran was building that strong community when it says that قول معروف ومغفرة خير من صدقة يتبعها أذى. Verse 263, it comes from, emphasizes the unique angle, which is that this charity is meant to build that strong community. If you're going to follow it up with reminders or hurtful words, then that will defeat the purpose. So what to do? Don't do it. Say a good word, because the purpose is to build that strong community. If the charity, which is a good mechanism to build that strong community, is going to lead to backfires, why? Because you do it the wrong way. You spend it and then you follow it with hurtful words or reminders, men and other. Then there is no point. قول معروف ومغفرة خير من صدقة يتبعها أذى. And then, of course, do not cancel out your charity with. So Quran's so picky when it comes to this charity, and so sensitive to the feelings of the person who is in need, that kept emphasizing this from different angles, to the point that if you're going to do it the wrong way, if you're going to donate the wrong way, don't do it. Don't do it. There is no point, because the purpose is to build that solid community, and charity was meant to cement those relationships. And if it's gonna cause spoil those relationships, so you'd rather just say a good word better than charity. So 13 verses, it's an amazing. It tells you that charity is an integral part of the Islamic paradigm. Why? Because it's like when it talks about jihad or to push back enemies, that's external threat. Charity takes care of many internal threats. Because we know in every society, including ours here, in every society, when people are left behind, we know what happens in societies. We know the vicious cycle. Compared to the societies where the wealth gap is not huge and where not many people are left behind. So, and as I said last time or time before, if we really understood our religion very well, Muslim probably would have been the first to develop that mixed economy, which is guarantees uh, dignified life to everybody who's willing to work without encouraging laziness or complacency. And then at the same time, don't go all the way to socialism, but there is, so it's probably Muslim would have been the first because that's what Quran is directing us in pushing us in this direction. So we concluded by, I mean, spend from the best that you have. من طيبات ما كسبتم. Don't spend from things that you hate or things that you are about to throw away. So you just spend it. And then comes shaitan, I mean, Quran, very practical, takes care of the reasons that prevents people from spending. Of course, the moment you want to spend, the shaitan will come to you and remind you of all your obligations. Even though people a lot of time will end up spending a lot of money on things that they don't need and they're not necessary, but when it comes, when they about to spend or to donate or to spend in charity, then the shaitan comes and reminds you of all your payments and obligations and tuition and mortgage and car payment and everything. And then, of course, we talked about wisdom. The blessings from Allah do not come only in the form of money. A lot of time we forget about this, unfortunately. And we need really to remember that all the money in the world will mean nothing for you if you're not healthy. For example, just talk to someone who is sick, they will tell you, I'm willing to give everything just to get back my health. So we should not underestimate the bounties of Allah. They don't come in the form of money only. Wisdom is great blessing from Allah. And they mentioned, I am aware of many cases of people who are suffering unnecessarily for spousal relationships or parent and children relationships, because unfortunately in the house there is minimum wisdom or there is no wisdom. So minor problems, they get out of hand and they're not they're not taken care of properly and early. And then, of course, always reminding you of something very important you need to pay attention to in the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He knows, alim or ya'lamuhu, that's a very powerful incentive. We know, I mean, we know workers, they do their best when the boss is around. Yeah. And when Allah reminds you of that He's aware, that He's watching, that's a very big incentive. And also, of course, big deterrence. You will be ashamed to do something that, to fall short even. Never mind to do something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like. And then we concluded, no, we didn't conclude. We talked about charity in public and in secret and the advantage of each. And of course, if you're not sure about your intention, go for the secret charity or concealed. I mean, if you are sure and you want to encourage people, go for the public one. And then the verse that eliminated, and this is important, ليس عليك هداهم ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء. And I'm very comfortable with the tafsir that this verse established or separated the charity from religion. That charity is a humanitarian effort for those who are in need. It's not something for Muslims only. And I saw this in some of the interpretation. I'm very comfortable with it. That this verse made it clear for Muslims that charity is not exclusive for Muslim, or it is not something that has to do with religion. It's something that is a humanitarian. For you help those who are in need. That's why it says ليس عليك هداهم. It's not like are you Muslim? I want to help you. I want to make sure. No, ليس عليك هداهم. You help people regardless, even those who rejected your message. أليس عليك هداهم ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء. Then وما تنفقوا من خير. So in the same verse, and this is unfortunately, even though it's clear cut in Quran, until very recently and probably until now, some Muslims, they still are debating or are not sure about this, or are, I mean, hesitant. They don't realize that charity has nothing to do if there is a calamity anywhere, if there is someone who's homeless or someone who needs help, has nothing to do with religion. It's a pure humanitarian task. Yes, you do it for the sake of Allah, but you do it motivated by human compassion. Of course, the Quran, Islam does not encourage laziness or people to start. That's why the next verse says that discourage begging. لا يسألون الناس الحافا, because Islam does not encourage, encourages work, does not encourage laziness. And so even begging is not really encouraged. So it's praising those who are in need and they're not begging. But of course, Islam assumes that this is a community. And when we talk about community, we're talking about true brotherhood and sisterhood and relationships. And therefore, if someone is suffering or in need, somebody else must know. Yeah. This is not the community that we have today, where people pray in the Islamic center in the mosque and they go home and nobody knows, and there might be someone who is suffering in the crowd and nobody is aware of it. Nobody knows and nobody helps, just because the connections and the relationships are very weak. And then concluded by those who spend day and night, secret and public. ليل والنهار سرا وعلانية. That's symbolic in Quran to say basically they spend in all circumstances. It's like الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم. It's to say that basically those who are continuously spending, to the point that spending is the norm for them. They just want to get as much money as possible to spend more. Yeah. And always remember that the guiding principle when it comes to spending is العفو. سألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو. You spend things that are beyond your needs. Money is not to be accumulated in Islam. تخزين or accumulation of money, of wealth, is very discouraged in Islam. You either spend it or invested. You invested, you create jobs, and or you help, you spend it and help others. That's where we reached. And now we're going to see the other system, which is the system based on interest. And I told you that in Surah Al-Rum, or in actually probably in other places, maybe not as explicit, Quran established the contrast between the system based on sadaqah and the system based on interest. I mean, وما آتيتم من ربا ليربو عند الله ليربو عند الناس فلا يربو عند الله وما آتيتم من زكاة تريدون وما آتيتم من ربا ليربو عندنا فلا يربو عند الله وما آتيتم من زكاة تريدون وجه الله فأولئك هم مضعفون. I'm gonna find the exact verse. سورة الروم. سورة الروم verse 39 وما أتيتم من ربا ليربو في أموال الناس فلا يربو عند الله وما أتيتم من زكاة تريدون وجه الله فأولئك هم مضعفون. In the same verse, establish the contrast between two systems: system that is based on charity and solidarity, and system based on abuse. Both, they are really contradictory. One of them keep distributing wealth. كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم. That's a guiding principle in Islam, that wealth should not be accumulated in the hands of the few. And I mentioned before that wealth is like the blood in the body. That's money in the society. And if it doesn't reach parts of the body, then those become dysfunctional or paralyzed, and that creates problem for the whole body. money is the same thing. So كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم. That's a goal when it comes to economy and economic system, is you should structure your economic system so that money does not end up accumulated in the hands of the few. كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم. That's a principle in Islam. And if you want to think about it, that's foundational verse. It's like لا إكراه في الدين كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم, so that it will not, talking about money, does not end up accumulated and concentrated in the hands of the few. So sadaqah and zakat, that's what it does. It's always trickle down the money, wealth, and distributed. Riba interest does exactly the opposite. It's always, pulls the money upward and accumulate, because riba, especially some kind of course, some kinds of interest, very abusive for those who are in need, and it keeps squeezing them more and more and pulling money in the hands of the few. So it starts with very eloquent way to discourage Muslim from this system. الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس. يعني الشيطان and مس at the same time. That's a lot, يعني. شيطان and مس. So those who take usury will rise up on the day of resurrection like someone tormented by Satan's touch. This is like Sarah. I don't know Sarah in English. It's like someone who's let's try to find the translation maybe. It's a very bad description. I mean, someone was touched by Shaitan and ended up in a state of let me see if someone finds the
Sheikh, maybe it's a hallucination or something like that.
Sarah. What's Sarah in English? Yeah, somebody has okay, I'm gonna find it.
Epilepsy? I don't know.
It's yeah. Anyway, it's someone. It's a very bad description meant to discourage. So those, and it's not necessary day of judgment, because some interpretation says that even in this life they are in that situation. Yeah. Again, in epilepsy, again in the traditional and the typical approach of the Quran, or one of the approaches, it doesn't tell you don't do this, or sometimes it does, but a lot of time it comes in indirect way. So it portrays this in a very bad way. Those who are taking interest, and interest, there are several. Of course, I said before, I don't want to get into the. Can you mute, please, everybody? Make sure you mute. There are different forms of interest that was practiced at that time. One of them, of course, is deferring payment. It's like you buy something, but you cannot afford it, or you don't pay the whole price. So you pay later, but you pay more. That's one, which is بيع بالأجل. يعني. There is another thing at that time called riba al-nasi'a, which is basically someone gives you money and you pay them fees every month, and then you return the money. That was there also. So someone will give you money, lend you money, and you pay them every month a certain amount, and then of course you have to pay back the amount that they lended you. And then there is riba al-fadl, which is when people exchange the same merchandise, but one of them is poor quality and one of them is good quality. So that, for example, you exchange like 10 kilograms or 10 pounds of bad quality dates with 1 pound of good quality. even this Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, don't do it. Instructed the companions not to do it. So this is just to tell you the context. These are the things that were practiced at the time. Of course, things became very complicated now, and really requires scholars everywhere to give the right fatwa, because it's easy to say everything is haram, but people have to understand how the economic system, how the business is working, and make the effort to get an authentic fatwa, not necessary to make people's life hard unnecessarily, just to be on the safe side, and not necessary to be loose and make everything is halal. But that's not me, that's the work of scholars. Keep this in mind, that this is something that is basically one of our weaknesses, is that we don't really keep up with the advancement in everything, technology and everything, and then we get stuck in old issues that do not exist anymore, and we're still debating them. So this is, I remember, and I think I should say this, that one of the great really scholars in this country is the late Sheikh Hanouti. I know some people people differ on assessment of Sheikh Hanouti, but I think he was one of those scholars who understood his role very well, and did not go to the in the path of being popular and please people and tell people what they want to hear or what is, and did a lot of work to find solutions for people. And what many people do not know, because a lot of people say or think that Sheikh Hanouti, you ask him about something, he will tell you halal. That's not true. You enter his office in Dar al-Hijrah and you find like 5 or 6 books open, and he does his homework diligently, but he was the real scholar who goes with the rule, إنما الفقه الرخصة من ثقة. The real fiqh is someone find you a solution that is authentic. It's not, and someone you trust. It's not, but the one, and the rest of the statement, I think by Hassan Basri or Sufyan al-Thawri, أما التشدد فيحسنه كل أحد. It's saying everything haram, that you don't need to be a scholar. Everybody can do it. But to find the solution for people, so that's just open. To focus on the idea that, or re-emphasize the idea that people have, Muslims, they have to keep reflecting and keep renewing and refreshing their religion to fulfill or to achieve the goals of the deen, while respecting and sticking to the constant of this religion. And they were already mentioned the examples of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. A few years after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made very big ijtihadat that probably if he was here and in our time, many Muslim groups would have called him kafir, just because of his ijtihad. ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا وأحل الله البيع وحرم الربا. These people who are using interest, they say we're doing it because it's like trade. Bay'a, tijara, it's like riba. So what's the point? Why is haram? In trade, you are exchanging merchandise with money. In riba, you're exchanging money for money. And that's the problem. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, Quran refutes that completely. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. No, they are not the same. One is lawful and one is not. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ. That's because they say trade and usury are the same, but God has allowed trade and forbidden usury. It's so establishing foundation very clear. Those who are they indulge in this system. It's like being touched by Satan, and then their argument is like, this is like trade. No, it is not. Trade is lawful. That's not lawful. فمن جاءه موعظة من ربه فانتهى فله ما سلف وأمره إلى الله. Beautiful. أنه فمن جاءه موعظة من ربه فانتهى فله ما سلف وأمره إلى الله. Whoever on receiving Allah's warning stops taking usury may keep his past gains. Allah will be his judge. طيب. What is this? Yani, as you can see, Quran is always finding solutions. And you know that companions are very sensitive. And companions, when the verse that we're going to inshallah come to it, at the end, when it says, تبدوا في ما في أنفسكم وتخفوه يحاسبكم به الله, they were very alarmed. Yani. Allah is going to hold us accountable for things that even for our thoughts and our feeling and inside. And then it was explained to them, no, I mean, that's not the meaning. So tell them riba about this, people will be really, I mean, shocked. Yeah. So Quran is finding solution, telling, okay, whatever you gained before, that's it. I mean, we're not going to go back and then just, you have to find out how much money you gained with this system, and then you have to, that's it. فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ. But that's it. From now on, no. فَانْتَهَى فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ. So encouraging you, finding you a way to start a new chapter or new page, and whatever you gained before, that's yours. وأمره إلى الله ومن عاد فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. طيب. Now you didn't know before, but now you know. Whatever happened before, it's yours. We're not gonna dwell in that. But from now on, no. ومن عاد, if you're gonna continue using this system, or then these will have severe punishment, because you got the warning and there is no excuse. Whoever goes back to usury will be an inhabitant of the fire, there to remain. More encouragement, more deterrence, more, it's very powerful language. يمحق الله الربا ويربي الصدقات. Again, another verse where the two systems are contrast between the two. يمحق الله الربا ويربي الصدقات. Allah blights, destroys usury, but blesses charitable deeds with multiple increase. It's the same, very similar verse to the Surah Al-Rum. أتيتم الربا ليربو في أموال الناس فلا يربو عند الله وما أتيتم من زكاة تريدون وجه الله فأولئك المضعفون. Here it's the same thing, that you go for the short gains. You think that you're going to make gains with the usury or the interest. This will destroy your life, destroy maybe your health, destroy your wealth, whatever. You go for the charity, you spend, that will put a blessing in your life. يربي الصدقات. والله لا يحب كل كفار أثيم. And that's a very strong language. He does not love the ungrateful sinner. It's saying basically those who are going to continue, they are ungrateful sinners. So in one verse, these are going to end up in hellfire. In the other verse, Allah does not like كفار أثيم, ungrateful sinner. إن الذين آمنوا, again the contrast, the deterring and then encouraging. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وأقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة لهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. It's a guarantee. It's not easy at that time to abandon this usury system, because it's a source of money for people. So that Muslims needed this to be comforted, or to be or some guarantees that, you should not be afraid. Those who believe, do good deeds, keep up the prayer, and pray the prescribed alms, will have their reward with their Lord. No fear for them, nor will they grieve. It's not easy. There are some Muslims at that time that are business people, and maybe they were involved in these things, and they are now going to abandon a big source of income. So they needed this reassurance. They needed this reassurance that if you are in good terms with Allah and you do everything right and you do the right thing and you do your best, etc., you should not be afraid, because at the end of the day, Allah is the source of all the money. I mean, it's not money comes to you through channels, but its ultimate source is Allah. So, and that's an important fundamental concept in Islam, that the money belongs to Allah. And people are just managers and entrusted with this money. That's very important concept in Islam that probably may seem to be strange. It's my money, I can do whatever I want. No, it's not. It's my life. I can do whatever I want with it. It's my body. No, it's not. Actually, none of these are yours. The body, you're going to be asked about how did you use it. The time, you're going to be asked about how did you use it. And the money also, you're going to be asked about how you earned it and how you used it. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله. طبعا you call them الذين آمنوا, already there is a response. They are responsive. And then اتقوا الله, that's big. وذروا ما بقي من الربا إن كنتم مؤمنين. Back to believers, to encourage them. They were told already that they have to stop. And then they were told that you will be fine. And they were told that if you continue, you're going to be in hellfire, or Allah will destroy your money. And then more, because this is big. This is nothing short of stopping alcohol. Because alcohol was an integral part of the life of the people at that time. That's why Quran did it gradually. And so here back, يا الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وذروا ما بقي من الربا إن كنتم مؤمنين. إن كنتم مؤمنين, that's very big. That's very, very strong language. If you are a true believer. So link the two. If you are a true believer, then you have to answer the call and do what you're supposed to do. You who believe, beware of Allah. Give up any outstanding dues from usury. Alas, whatever you gained before, it's and now from now on, just leave it. If you are true believers, that's big. You start by يا أيها الذين آمنوا. That's what you need to do. And then the verse concludes by saying if, because you're claiming that you're believers. So if you are true believers, then that's what you're supposed to do. And then warning. فإن لم تفعلوا فأذنوا بحرب من الله ورسوله. طيب. Over there, it's يمحق الله الربا, destroys money. Here, and you're going to find yourself at war with Allah and His Messenger. That's even more severe. If you're not, if you don't abide by this, you're going to be at war. فأذنوا بحرب من الله ورسوله. If you do not, then be warned of war from Allah and His Messenger. And who wants to be at war with Allah? So destroying money, if that was not enough for you, you're gonna end up in hellfire. If that's not, there is a guarantee, and you are reassured that you will be okay, you'll be fine. If you abandon this, if all of this did not work, now the stronger even medicine. It's like if you still with all of this, you don't do what you're supposed to do, you don't abandon this type of income that comes from abusing others. فأذنوا بحرب من الله ورسوله. And then, of course, with the warning comes the incentive. فإن تبتم فلكم رؤوس أموالكم لا تظلمون ولا تظلمون. Now, if you فإن تبتم فلكم رؤوس أموالكم لا تظلمون ولا تظلمون. So if you stop, if you shall have your capital. If you do not, You should have your capital if you repent, and without suffering loss or causing others to suffer loss. Every time there is a change of system, it's not easy. Remember the slavery, how Islam, solved it. It's a very complicated issues. Alcohol, it's a very complicated issues. There are issues that were very complicated because that society in particular was messed up completely. That society was total mess. So this also was part of the system, and people were making money out of this. And maybe those who have money, some of them may have been relying exclusively on this type of income. يعني. وإن كان ذو عسرة فنظرة إلى ميسرة. Keep in mind that idea I said you have to keep it in the background all the time, that this is a religion, this is a manual, the Quran and the prophetic model to build that individual and that community for that mission. So وإن كان ذو عسرة فنظرة إلى ميسرة. If the debtor is in difficulty, then delay things until matters become easier for him. Remember, at that time, if the debtor is in difficulty, the interest will go up. So Quran is directing Muslims in different direction of solidarity, and do not take advantage of the weakness of somebody or their desperate situation. فَإِنْ كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ. Time has come for that debt to be paid back. Person cannot give them some extra time, but don't charge them more, or don't take advantage of that situation. And then even the verse takes it even to a higher level. وَأَن تَصَدَّقُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. Even if you forgive. So there is a minimum, which is to give an extension. And that's the nature of the Islam. Always encourage the minimum and then leave it for you to go as high as you can. If the debtor is in difficulty, then delay things until matters become easier for him. Still, if you were to write it off as an act of charity, that would be better for you if only you knew. Few words, wallah. Few words. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 words total. Tells you if the debtor is in difficulty, give them extra time. And then if you even write it off, that's even better for you if you knew. And if you know what you're gonna get for that, how Allah will gonna be so pleased with you, because Allah is the compassionate and wants us to be compassionate. And at that time, that's what Allah wants you to do. And that's what the Prophet would have done. You're coming to collect your money, you find the person is in difficulty, and then you give them extra time, or even if you can, write it off. And Quran tells you that it's better for you. خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. And you're not doing anybody a favor. But so the first one is good, because it's coming from Allah as a recommendation. وَإِنْ كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ. But the second is even higher when you write it off. And Quran tells you that if it's better for you if you knew. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ ثُمَّ تُوَفَّى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لا يظلمون. So it's explaining إن كنتم تعلمون, it's خير لكم. خير لكم, of course, even in this life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised us that charity can do a lot of things good for you, or it can protect you from bad things that were coming your way. And of course the day of judgment, and beware of a day when you will be returned to Allah. Every soul will be paid in full for what it has earned, and no one will be wronged. Of course, at that day, that's when you realize that what you have done with that person in difficulty was really good for you. That's when you're going to be happy if you did it, and probably regret it if you didn't do it. وَاتَّقُوا يَوْمًا تُرْجَعُونَ فِيهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Of course, the biggest engines of incentive and motivation in Quran are the belief in Allah and the hereafter. That's why Quran is full of Tawheed and concepts of Allah and names and attributes, and then of a reminder of the Day of Judgment, because these are the most powerful engines. That's why the Prophet in many hadith, it's مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. So whoever believes in Allah and the hereafter, let him do this, because that's what will drive you or motivate you to do. And then of course, when you realize that you're going to be compensated fairly, that encourages you to do as much as possible in this life, especially you know that you're investing with Allah. That will do it for the part of riba, in contrast with the zakat. Now the other section, I said there are 3 sections left in Surah Al-Baqarah. It's the longest verse in Quran, verse 282. It's a whole page in many Mus'haf or Quran. It's the verse about dayn, lending and debts. Dayn, so clarified interest and distinguished from trade, clarified before charity. All of these are financial transactions. And then comes to the dayn and tijara and rahan. These are verse 282, which is the longest verse in Quran, and 283, both of them. Both of them, they talk about the transaction of lending or borrowing money, etc. So, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه. That's the first rule. This is full of rules, by the way. It goes into details how this should be conducted. So there is, you're borrowing, somebody is borrowing or lending money. You who believe, when you contract a debt for a stated term, put it down in writing. That's very powerful. Very powerful. You know that if it is not in writing, there can be misunderstanding, people can forget, everything can happen. So Quran, in its methodology of cementing that strong community based on clarity and prevention of problems, not even solving problems, preventing problems, put it down in writing so that there will be no misunderstanding. No, it didn't happen. No, it was this amount. No, it was that amount. Put it in writing. إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه. So that's the first rule. And then وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ كَاتِبٌ بِالْعَدْلِ. Somebody will write. When you have a scribe, write it down justly between you. Somebody trustworthy will write this contract or this memo of understanding or whatever agreement between you. Look at how much Quran goes into details. وَلَا يَأْبَ كَاتِبٌ أَنْ يَكْتُبَ كَمَا عَلَّمَهُ اللَّهُ. Because if this was left open, maybe you call anybody to write, saying, I'm not gonna write it. Why should I put myself in trouble? So close that door. No scribe should refuse to write. That's not an option. That's one thing. And then, of course, how? فَلْيَكْتُبْ وَلْيُمْلِلِ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ الْحَقُّ وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ وَلَا يَبْخَسْ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. The more you discover how amazing this Quran is, I mean, it's let him write as Allah taught him. So no, فَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ كَاتِبٌ as Allah taught him, and then let the debtor dictate. And the one who is borrowing money. يكتب الذي عليه الحق. And let him fear Allah. It's always there, because there is no law on earth that you cannot find loopholes for it, but always linking people to fear of Allah, his Lord, and not diminish the debt at all. ولا يبخس منه شيئا. طيب, scenarios, the debtor is not really someone who's wise or reasonable or has issues. فإن كان الذي عليه الحق سفيها أو ضعيفا أو لا يستطيع أن يمله فليملل وليه بالعدل. If the debtor is feeble-minded, weak, or unable to dictate anything for any reason, he cannot do it, then let his guardian dictate justly. So to the least details, nothing is left. يعني واستشهدوا شهيدين من رجالكم. So there is somebody, a scribe, who cannot refuse, should write this, and then 2 witnesses. فاستشهدوا شهيدين من رجالكم فإن لم يكون رجلين فرجل وامرأتان ممن ترضون من الشهداء أن تضل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى. Now we're going to stop for a few minutes on this. Call in 2 men as witnesses. If 2 men are not there, then call 1 man and 2 women out of those you approve as witnesses, so that if one of the 2 women should forget, the other can remind her. طيب. Of course, this is like the rules for inheritance. I think and I believe that the ijtihad should not stop in Islam and should always be reflecting on these things, and then remember that how Quran has tried to strike the balance between 2 things, which is not easy, to be relevant for that society, that particular society, and then to be valid and relevant for all times and all places. The only way you can do that is through ijtihad. There is no other way. There is no other way other than the real ijtihad that is guided by the overarching goals of Islam, maqasid, and then to try to respect the tawabit. So it says that 2 men or 1 man and 2 women. Anybody who is aware of that society will find this very reasonable, very logic, because the gap between men and women at that time is a huge. There is no comparison. Society is male dominated completely, and women were nowhere to be seen. Yani they were buried alive, and they were buried alive. So they had no presence in the society. So anybody may not only see it fair, maybe see it as probably it's a compliment for women, or it's because, again, that society was so abusive of women, and Islam came to try to fix this. But there is a situation there. There is a situation. I'm not a scholar. I'm not giving a fatwa. I'm saying these things, they have to be reflected upon. They have to be reflected upon. Things have changed tremendously nowadays. You have women leading Germany. You have women leading big companies. You have women in every situation, every position in politics, in business, everywhere. Things have to be reflected upon. Not necessarily changing the rule or quickly or easily, but there should be some in-depth reflection and ijtihad. Should we continue with this exactly by literally, or things have changed? Again, that's not for me. That's for scholars and for research centers that should be established, where real scholars will look into these and then try to, like Umar al-Khattab did. I mean, Umar al-Khattab made ijtihad in clear-cut verses, just because things have changed completely. And he didn't do it in 1 verse. He did it in 3 things. 3 things, all of them are clear-cut, and there were some ijtihad. Just because the circumstances, he realized that applying the literal verse in that context will defeat the purpose of the Islam. It will not be just. If you're going to cut the hands of people who were hungry, that defeats the purpose of the deen. That backfires. Yani. If you're gonna distribute the two empires on the fighters, that's not the purpose of the deen. That will defeat the principle of كي لا يكون دولة بين الأغنياء منكم, so that wealth will not concentrate in the hands of the few, and you will not end up with an army of very wealthy people. Yani. That's not going to be an army. Yani. So there is someone who used his mind, and nobody can question yani, that Umar ibn Khattab was so careful about authenticity. Yani. Nobody will say that Umar ibn Khattab is al-halal and al-halal. Yani. That's Umar ibn Khattab. Yani. Umar ibn Khattab making ijtihad in very clear-cut verses. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ, he stopped it. They said there is used to be مؤلفة قلوبهم before, when you were heads of tribes. Now your tribe is in the Muslim community, so there is no point here. Just to reflect on this. ولا تسأموا أن تكتبوه صغيرا ولا يأبى الشهداء إذا ما دعوا. It's like the scribe should not refuse. The witnesses also should not refuse. So Quran, the verse, it's really want to make sure that's going to happen. تكتبوه, and then the scribe, and the scribe cannot refuse, and then the witness, and the witness cannot refuse. ولا يأبى الشهداء إذا ما دعوا. They should not refuse the witnesses. Okay. Let the witnesses not refuse when they are summoned. Right. Now comes the idea that if it is small amount, why should we writing it? Why should we write it? So Quran comes to seal that. It's not about small or large. It's about clarity and about keeping those relationships strong and keeping that society strong. ولا تسأموا أن تكتبوه صغيرا أو كبيرا إلى أجله. It has nothing to do with the amount. You're borrowing $10,000, you're borrowing $100, you're borrowing whatever. It's always because the purpose is to be fulfilled. It's not about how much, it's about that clarity. And this is a community that is being built for a huge mission, and therefore we don't want any weaknesses inside. We don't want any trouble, because weaknesses, any issue in a community between two people may end up in polarizing the whole community. So that's why Quran is taking care of these in preventive way, by prevention. Because this community should not be busy with anything. This community has a humongous mission to fulfill, should not be distracted by anything else. Don't leave anybody behind. There is no abuse. And then if you are exchange money, write it down, or borrowing and lending, so that everything will be clear, so that we will not waste any time on these side issues, because we have a humongous mission to fulfill. ذلكم أقسط عند الله وأقوم للشهادة وأدنى ألا ترتابوا. 3 reasons why this is important to do. And what we learn from here is that this religion, it's always purpose driven. So whenever Allah tells us about something, he tells us why. So the Muslim brain, like Imad al-Din Khalil, I think, said, the Muslim Muslim gha'i, meaning always purpose driven. Why? Ask the why, so that you know what you're doing. It's not the what. It's not just I'm doing something and that's fine. No, why you're doing it. It starts with the intention itself. The deeds are evaluated by the intention. Always you ask yourself why you're doing it. So Allah is teaching us in the Quran this concept of explaining and justifying, telling you, and that's why you should be doing it. And I see it as encouraging us to ask that question. So when we are reading Quran, we should be asking why. When there is a fatwa, we should be asking why. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining to us, even though he doesn't have to, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining to us, Who else will tell us something without convincing him? Nobody. Allah telling you يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس. يعني Allah will tell you to stop doing something because it's harmful for you. So there is always that explained. Here, 3 reasons why you should be righted, whether it is small or big. Do not disdain to write the debt down, be it small or large, along with the time it falls due. This way is more equitable in Allah's eyes. That's what Allah likes you to do. And that's enough for a true believer. You tell him this is what Allah likes you to do, he's gonna do it. And then more reliable as testimony. أقوم للشهادة. Any issues down the road, disagreement, pull that contract. أقوم للشهادة. Again, this deen, this religion does not want this community to be wasting time in courts all the time and people suing each other. Try to prevent it. There is a contract. More reliable as testimony and more likely to prevent doubts between you. That's the reason. So, أقسط عند الله أقوم للشهادة أدنى لا ترتابوا. This is what Allah likes you to do, because Allah wants that community to be focused on its mission and not to be distracted, and don't want this internal issues that will polarize the community and weakens the community. As we will see, inshallah, sometime, the Surah in Surah An-Nur, how strong the language that the Quran used against those rumors that weakened the community, the rumors about Aisha radiallahu anha. Very strong, very harsh language, because that's not what you're supposed to be. That's not what you're supposed to be distracted with or busy with. You were chosen for a very noble and very big mission, and that's beneath you. That's not أقوم أقسط عند الله أقوم للشهادة أدنى لا ترتاب. طيب, that's debt and lending and borrowing. إلا أن تكون تجارة حاضرة تديرونها بينكم. That's another line. Now it's trade. فليس عليكم جناح ألا تكتبوها. You're buying something from somebody, you don't need to write it down. You're exchanging, you get the, and that's part of the ease of the religion. What is it? But if the merchandise is there and you hand it over, there is no blame on you if you do not write it down. You don't have to. I mean, we're exchanging money for or a merchandise. You don't need to write it down. وأشهدوا إذا تبايعتم. وأشهدوا إذا تبايعتم. So you then dropped the requirement for writing it down, but kept the witnesses. Have witnesses present whenever you trade with one another. It's amazing how Quran wants to seal all the openings that may create problems. Of course, you can think of it nowadays. There are other ways that this is documented. May not need witnesses anymore, because these transactions now, they are recorded in a, you get a receipt. Get a receipt and something is recorded, so they can trace it back, so that there is no need for witnesses, because also it runs against the purpose of Islam of making life easier for people. If every time you're going to buy something there should be witnesses, life will be very difficult. Again, at that time, that might be very relevant. That society has no machines, no laws, no rules. What was really lawless society, and very but things have changed. ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد. ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد. This is very powerful, by the way. Sometimes when you are witnesses in a sensitive case, they have to secure some or manage to find some security for you so that you will not be harmed. This is something that we can detect easily from this verse. ولا يضر كاتب ولا شهيد. ولا يضر كاتب ولا شهيد. So give me a second. Okay, ولا يضر كاتب ولا شهيد. Those described and the witness should not be harmed because of what they did. And when Quran tells you this, it leaves it for you to find the mechanism. To make sure that these people, the one who is going to write and the one who's going to be witness, because we know these things down the road may cause some problems. But these people should be protected. ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد. ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد. It says have witness. Okay. Let no harm be done to either scribe or witness. Of course, this goes back to the original, because there was no scribe for the trade, but for everything. There is a scribe, there are witnesses, they should be protected so that people will, because Quran, Islam is fair. I mean, when I ask you that the scribe cannot refuse and the witnesses cannot refuse, you're going to have to provide some protection for them. For if you did cause them harm, it would be a crime on your part. وَإِن تَفْعَلُوا فَإِنَّهُ فُسُوقٌ بِكُمْ. Anybody who's going to cause someone harm just because they were scribed in a contract or they're witnesses, that's a crime on your part. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Be mindful of Allah and He will teach you. He has full knowledge of everything. So that's a very good, that's perfect way to conclude it. That if you still have any doubt, this is Allah is teaching you and Allah knows everything. So your knowledge is so little compared to His. And then, of course, linking everything to taqwa, that's the nature of Islam. It wants Muslims to go above even the minimum requirement of the law, which is that you're doing, even if there is a loophole, even if you can get away with it, if it is not fair, you're going to have always to remember that Allah is watching you. So we're going to conclude, inshallah, with the next verse, and then we'll leave the last part, inshallah, for next time. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. So this is an exception. You are not in the city, you are in traveling. وَلَمْ تَجِدُوا كَاتِبًا. So how detailed Quran in this issue. Again, it's for the very same purpose, which is we want this community to be focused, we want to be solid, want to be empowered, we want to seal any openings that may weaken this community or make it divided or polarized or distracted. So going even to the special case, if you are not in the city, if you are on a journey and cannot find the scribe, إن كنتم على سفر ولم تجدوا كاتبا. The other verse started with كاتب. فليكتب بينكم كاتب بالعدل. Should be scribe. You are traveling and there is no scribe to find. فرهان مقبوضة. Something should be handed over as a security. It's like they call it collateral or something. I mean, if there is a way that the debtor should hand something as an evidence or as a security. فرهان مقبوضة. فإن أمن بعضكم بعضا فليؤدي الذي اؤتمن أمانته وليتق الله ربه. But if you decide to trust one another, then let the one who is trusted fulfill his trust. I mean, if you decide that the one who's lending money, that it does not need this collateral or security, is saying that, so the one who borrowed the money should honor their obligations, and وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ, always. وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ, because now there is nothing. There is nothing to prove. There is no evidence. There is no collateral. There is no contract. وليتق الله ربه. ولا تكتموا الشهادة ومن يكتمها فإنه آثم قلبه. ولا تكتموا الشهادة ومن يكتمها فإنه آثم قلبه. I'm leaning more toward the interpretation that this testimony is when there is issue in the court. Do not conceal evidence. Anyone who does so has a sinful heart. That's big. And Allah is fully aware of everything you do. So if you know something, you cannot conceal it. I mean, kitman al-shahada, and we can expand on this. Any knowledge that you know, any information that you have, if concealing it may cause someone harm or cause them to lose their rights, that's big on you. Athimun qalbu is not easy, because there is a sin that you do, and there is this heart becomes sinful. That's big. وَمَنْ يَكْتُمْهَا فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ. So there is a sinner and there is a sinful heart. This is the second category. So concealing anytime. I know many people who do this all the time, just to avoid the headache. I don't want to get involved. It's not up to you. If you know something and concealing it is going to cause a problem to someone, it's not up to you. It's not a choice. وَمَنْ يَكْتُمْهَا فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ. Of course, keep in mind that witness should be protected, because this is talking about in court. In court, you know something, you have to say it. And then you have to link it to the previous verse when it said that scribe and witnesses should be protected. وَلَا يُضَارَّ كَاتِبٌ وَلَا شَهِيدٌ. The societies, government, whatever, has to make sure that these people are protected. I'm going to stop here, Anna, and see if there are comments, questions, and then the rest is just a beautiful dua at the end of the Surah Al-Baqarah, which is everybody is encouraged to memorize 284 to 286. I know many people do, and to use them in prayers. These and Ayat al-Kursi, both, to try to use them frequently. All right, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa
If
barakatuh.
nobody has any question about this subject, I like to change the subject a little bit, because we are right now during the holiday. And this country, you feel the happiness. Unfortunately, as Muslim, we don't know how we be happy. I born and raised in Damascus, in the Christian quarter of Damascus. Christian quarter of Damascus, it's not meaning Christian neighborhood, but 95% of the Christian, they live in that neighborhood, but they are not the majority. We are the majority. Okay, but the Christian kids, they were a lot more happy than us. They go to the church, they go boys and girls, no problem at all. They go field trip, they see the happiness. We Muslim, we go to the mosque, the sheikh tell us, sit in the corner, sit in the back. It's no happiness at all. We went to the college. I'm not joking. I am talking about my kids right now, or my grandkids, while they are leaving Islam. We went to college, field trip. All Muslim girls, they don't go because their parents, they are not allowing them to go. And you go, 90% of the field trip, Christian boys and girls. Muslim, they don't see any happiness. If we cannot take out ourselves out of this cycle, I think we will be in trouble. We're already in trouble, but I think we'll be more. I hope the scholars can talk about it the way you talk about money. I think this is more important than money.
That's a big issue, Brother Abu Abdullah. Let's see if there is questions about. Otherwise, I'm gonna come back to it, inshallah. If there are some direct.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I have to leave in about 10 minutes, so I have just a comment
Sure.
about the subject. So you mentioned Sheikh Hanuti, which is I used to go and listen to him. He's like a big teacher, and I was a small student to him. And I used to see lots of books. Anyway, inshallah, may Allah send His blessing to his soul and benefit us from his knowledge.
Ameen.
Anyway, I remember one time when I came to America, I attended a khutbah for him in Darul Hijrah sermon, and he mentioned Darul Islam, the Islam home, Islam area, or something. And at that time, I thought that was very strange what he said. But what he said actually wasn't said by him only. It was said by Abu Ali al-Jabba'i from the Mu'tazila, big scholars. And what he said about Darul Islam, the area where the country or the state where you can say your opinion freely and you can practice your religion freely without any fear from anybody. But for me, that time, it was different than what I learned back home. Like Abu Abdullah said, we came from there's lots of walls we have to respect, and we have to stop. I mean, there's a lot of checkpoints. You cannot do this, you cannot do this. So there's a lot of fear in our personality. So, but also Sheikh Hanuti, when he came to talk about riba, in our culture, we are scared from anything that has extra cent or something. But the idea is not that. I mean, there's Abu Bakr al-Asam talk about this, which is I'm not aware of but all of what he said. I know Sheikh Hanuti came up, broke some walls or something when he talk about this, because the idea is riba means dhulm, oppression. But if you want to do industry or you need banking, and we have to solve this problem. We've been in our back home, we have no industry, we have no real banking, we just copy. So if you want to do changes, you need to have industry or establish a good economy. You have to look at this stuff and find a solution, not just go back to that scholar said thousands of years ago. No, we have to find something different. Also, there's another point, it's really worth mentioning, which is society is improving. They go with history, or it goes from primitive to more modern societies. So at one time, women, as you mentioned, they have no saying in anything. And if you go back to the Judaism, they were like an object in the house. Even in the Arabic, in the tribal societies, they can be sold, they can be, inherited.
Buried alive.
Yeah. That's worse than anything else. So I think with improving in life, things are different, and we cannot just close our eyes on that. That's what I just, my 2 cents.
Jazakallah khair, very good, as usual.
I do have
I'm gonna leave just few minutes to address the Brother Abu Abdullah comment, but go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I wanted to highlight and then also touch on Brother Abdullah's point that in the IAM 284 is taken out of context a lot, and I was once in a khutbah where an imam did that, where it says "Lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fil ard, wa in tubdu ma fi anfusikum aw tukhfuhu yuhasibukum bihi Allah." So what this person that was given the khutbah said, you're gonna be. So I want to highlight this to the brothers and sisters. He said, Allah will judge you, and based on even your internal thoughts. So he completely took it out of context, because this is related to being a witness to a loan transaction. So he completely took it out of context, and he said, "Oh, Allah will judge you even on your thoughts." And I was like, "Oh my God!" So unfortunately, this person called himself an imam, and he was being paid a salary of an imam. And yeah, he completely took this this verse, and maybe other so-called imams take it out of context and mislead and confuse Muslims. And to Abu Abdullah's point, I have 2 points. He is right. From my own experience as a young kid, whenever say we went out to dinner as a family, my mother would only remember to warn us about misbehaving on the way to the restaurant, and take all the fun out of it. And if you do this and if you do that, I'm gonna, and after 5 minutes of being lectured, we're like, okay, well, she took all the fun out of it.
طيب. Go.
Can I add on what about
Sure.
Talpa's point? Salam
Sure.
alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah, Sheikh Sahil, there are a lot of parents who are concerned, especially during this season, the festival. A lot of kids are asking why we don't have a Christmas tree. I want Santa. You know, stuff like that. So how do we deal with these issues? And I think because of COVID, there's a lot we can learn as a community, especially how we run our masajid. Unfortunately, as we know, masjids are not a place of comfort, unfortunately, just a place of prayers and going back to what you're doing. So maybe during, this tragedy of COVID, it's time to learn how we can get back as a community, inshallah, once everything opens up, and how can we do better, especially for our young ones, to feel the love of the deen, the love of family. You know, a lot of us are immigrants here with no extended families, and kids, it's very sad for the parents and also for the kids, and you don't feel welcome at the masjid. It's really terrible, you know. So what can we do, or how can we go forward?
These are very big issues. Let me start with go back to Brother Abu Abdullah. And let me tell you this, and you may find it like probably a little bit shocking. If you really don't find yourself happy in all circumstances, then the version of Islam that you have, you need to question it. You need really to question, because this deen guarantees that. من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة, pleasant life. So if you really find yourself stressed out with this life, and you're not really at peace in all circumstances, then you have to question the version of Islam that you have. It may not be really the true one. If you really embrace this religion as a life mission, and it is in your mind all the time, and you live that mission, you live that mission, and you try to advance it day in, day out, you will find some type of happiness that people cannot buy it with millions of dollars. And that's true. That's not exaggeration. That's true. You find a type of happiness that you cannot buy it. Simply you cannot buy it, because there is no better happiness or more happiness than knowing why you are here in this life and why you were created, and trying to do it, and having clear vision and clear purpose in life and trying to fulfill it. So we failed miserably when we turned this religion into a religion of stress and sadness and death and hellfire and anger and tension and all the nonsense. That's a big failure. It's one of the failures. Failures, there are many. This is one of the big failures, that we turned a religion that is meant to make you at peace with yourself, with Allah, with this universe, with everything, by knowing those rules and leveraging them and doing what you're supposed to do, because Allah, who created these hearts, says, "Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub," that these hearts find tranquility in the remembrance of Allah. Of course, remembrance of Allah does not mean that you sit in a mosque and you take a masbaha and then you continue you're doing dhikr. That's not what is meant. So that's a big problem that has to be solved. This deen cannot be communicated to future generations as long as it is in this poor shape. It's a very deficient. It's not inspiring. It's not empowering. It's cause you, and I heard it from brilliant young man here. I don't need it. I don't need it. I mean, it was arranged. I met him through his parents, and I was very decent, very brilliant, and said, this kind of religion I can do without. I'm fine. It's only causing me problems and tension. It's not helping me in any way. And he was amazed when I was talking to him, say, but what you're talking about, that's different religion. That's not the way I was told. That's not the way that is. That's not the religion that is preached in the mosques. And I don't know whether people accept yours as authentic or not. But I remember that a few years ago, this is sitting down with a young man, very, very successful in his school and brilliant mind and decent. And when he was said that's the kind of religion that is being shoveled through my throat from my parents, I don't need it. It's only problems. It's causing only shackles. It's not helping me in any form or shape. Actually, not parents. It didn't mean just parents. They meant the community in general. So that's a problem. It's one of those big problems that have to be resolved. And that confirms the idea that we really need to rediscover this religion. It's beyond repair. The version that we have is beyond repair. It just, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the state of the Muslim world. I mean, do we need better proof than that? The mosques are full. And there are so many channels promoting religion, and so many websites, and so many groups, and so many whatever, YouTube channels, and etc. And you see the situation. And do we need more proof that this is a very deficient version of Islam? So again, that's what Islam promises. If you really understand this religion properly, and you free yourself from the shackles of everything is haram until proven otherwise, and to be on the safe side, and just be, I mean, think about it, go back to discover the original Islam, establish that relationship, direct relationship with Allah, reflect on the Quran, free your mind from all the shackles, except things that are clear cut in Islam, and these are very few. And the proof is the verse says, قُلْ تَعَالُوا أَتْلُوا مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ. Let me tell you what was forbidden, because this is a short list. Didn't say, let me tell you what is lawful. قُلْ تَعَالُوا أَتْلُوا مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ. Let me tell you what are the short list of things that are forbidden. So a lot of work needed. A lot of work is needed to discover or rediscover that pure, true, original Islam, that very inspiring, very empowering, that, I mean, the proof is what success story. These are the Bedouins that became leaders and champions of great civilization. That's the Islam that we need to find, that we lost. That's the Islam that we lost, and we replace it by things that are mostly nonsense, very ridiculous. So a lot of work need to be done on the Muslim mind. A lot of work need to be done on the Muslim personality. A lot of work need to be done to rediscover the true Islam, because this kind of Islam is not, we are failing to sell it to a captive audience, which is our children. Forget about communicating it to others. We are failing to sell it or to pass it on to a captive audience, which is your children in the house, are not accepting it from you, except when they are young and they have no option. So the moment they get reach 16 or 18, they don't need it. I mean, it's really doesn't add anything to their lives. As opposite to the original Islam, which makes somebody very ambitious, very empowered, very inspired to be all they can be, to maximize their impact, to make a difference, to realize their potential. That's the true Islam. Yani. So it's very unfortunate yani, that we reach a point where we cannot find happiness or manage yani, to be happy. Yani. Even though that's not what religion is meant to be. And we know in many Muslim communities and societies, yani, when somebody become practicing Islam, part of the sign to tell you that I'm a good Muslim now is to be rude, yani. Is to be rude and always angry and mad. And that's like it's a sign of taqwa, yani. And I'm becoming Muslim, a true Muslim, so I'm now, yani, that's not true, yani. You don't have to, yani. You get it wrong, yani. Anyway, inshallah, these are big topics. We'll come to them, but that's really unfortunate that I remember the saying that they say that Islam is a winnable case in the hands of lousy lawyer. It's a winnable case in the hands of lousy lawyer. That's what happens a lot. It's a wonderful religion, very inspiring, very empowering, great, ensures happiness and success and push you to be successful in this life, even before the hereafter. Then Muslims come and tell you, no, you have to choose between the two. And if you have to choose between the two, go for the hereafter, forget about this life. And for this life, you can only sit down and think about death and think and be poor. It's better because the Prophet died as poor. And all of this nonsense, yani, all of this ridiculous things. Yani.
Dr. Suhail, sorry, I know
Yes.
you need to leave maybe shortly. Just to remind ourselves, like we know our Christian friends and neighbors are in this celebration. So like as a way to give thanks or acknowledge, what's your opinion?
I mean, it's well established that congratulating people with their holidays is lawful, and there is no problem about it. That's many very big scholars and the institution established that. For our children, and I see these are always, we're trying to do patchwork. We fail in the essential, in passing on the essentials of the religion to our children, and then we end up fighting with them on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And this is happening with many parents and children. They fail to pass on the concept of Tawheed. They fail to pass on the mission of Islam, to pass on and to explain the true religion and Allah to their children. And then they ended up fighting and making it life or death. Yani, we should not now, Christmas and Thanksgiving, etc. And I see always these things are trying to make up for a failure on essential, much more essential things.
Yeah.
Dr. Gurnucci.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
As a Christian, what I find works well is the interaction between Christians and Muslims. That I would very much encourage that as I've been attending this class off and on for nearly 4 years, and what's been good for me is it has strengthened my Christian belief as well as given me increased respect for the Muslim belief. And so I think I would encourage more interaction between Christians and Muslims as a means not only to find out what unites us, but also as a means to strengthen our individual religions and our practices of them.
Very good point. You, as usual, yes. Actually, when it says what is common is it's enough to remember that we belong to one big family called humanity, and then we are fellow citizens. Yeah. And that's big before anything else. So, and that has to be always front and center. That we are, that's what keeps people together. And then when it comes to religion, also people have to find commonalities and find there are so many ideas that are shared, so many good causes that people can work on together, and not dwell on the differences and make it and blow them out of proportion. So I totally agree. Interaction in societies is always good because it always, bigotry thrives on ignorance. The more people know each other, the more they will respect each other, accept each other, and that will pave the way for cooperations and working together for the greater good. When people do not know each other, there is a saying that say people hate that which they don't know. So when people don't know each other, they become afraid of each other, and then that will open the door for radical views from all directions, from Muslim, from Christian, from anybody. They will thrive in that environment. But the more people interact and know each other, the more they close the door on any fanatics and radical views. Yeah.
جزاك الله كل خير دكتور سهيل.
وإياكم إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله see you next Sunday. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.
السلام عليكم.
Salam. We wish our friend Hugh happy Christmas and New Year.
And we wish you happy holidays.
Thank you. Always an honor to have you and your community.